A solitary traveler runs through the dark, desperately fleeing the loud, visible monsters of the world, the thunder of war and the shadow of despair, in search of wealth and a place of safety. We share a common belief: if we can just outpace the violence, escape the battlefield, and hoard enough resources, we will finally be safe. That fear is grounded in reality. Armed conflicts claim roughly 200,000 combatant lives every single year, and recent spikes in global violence have only made that threat more visible. But the quiet tragedy of despair takes an even heavier toll. Annually, around 700,000 people take their own lives, though expanding access to mental health care in Europe and Asia is beginning to drive that global number down. Proverbs 3:25 warns us to have no fear of sudden disaster or of the ruin that overtakes the wicked. If we spend our lives fleeing the stranger's sword, will we ever notice the quiet killer waiting at our own tables? Seeking mere survival is a trap. The traveler arrives first in a cracked, dry expanse, the Valley of Scarcity, representing the acute dangers of the developing world. Epidemiologists categorize the threats here as diseases of poverty. These acute infections like malaria, cholera, and lower respiratory diseases kill within days or weeks. The tragedy is these deaths are inexpensive to prevent. It doesn't require a medical miracle. Clean drinking water, basic soap, and existing vaccines are often enough to stop them. When resources vanish completely, 3.6 million people die directly from extreme malnutrition, conditions doctors strictly classify as marasmus or kwashiorkor. But those strict medical criteria only reveal a fraction of the crisis. Hunger acts as a silent sponsor to other infections, stripping the body of its defenses, until the mortality of hunger-related causes reaches roughly 9 million people annually. Why do we feel pity for the man with an empty stomach, yet fail to recognize the danger in a man who cannot stop filling his own? Scarcity is a brutal killer, but it is an enemy humanity already knows how to defeat. The traveler escapes the wastes and enters the walled city of gold. They expect salvation, but they find a population that is chronically ill. This environment triggers an epidemiological transition. As a nation acquires wealth, its citizens stop dying from bacteria and exposure. Instead, they begin dying from the consequences of their own lifestyle choices. These diseases of affluence, heart failure, type 2 diabetes, and Alzheimer's, are the direct result of sedentary routines and an overabundance of salt and refined sugars. Diseases linked to obesity are now the largest killer, claiming over 5 million lives a year. Compared against our most visible fears, the paradox is clear. Overeating kills 25 times more people than war, dwarfing the losses from suicide and direct starvation. Philippians 3:19 speaks of those whose God is their belly. The ultimate tragedy of wealth is that it can transform the human body into an inescapable, self-made prison. The walls of the banquet hall have collapsed. The cheap luxuries of the wealthy are spilling out like a flood, directly over the cracked, dry soil of the barren wastes. This phenomenon is known as the double burden of disease. It occurs when a single population is squeezed from both ends, fighting the infections of poverty while simultaneously buckling under the weight of chronic lifestyle conditions. The plague of abundance has successfully penetrated poor countries through the export of cheap, processed sugars and fast food to regions that previously only knew scarcity. Populations in Africa and Southeast Asia are now dying from diabetes and obesity while they are still under the active threat of malaria. This creates a logistical nightmare for fragile medical systems that must now find a way to fund both cheap vaccines for acute infections and wildly expensive chronic therapies for the affluent diseases they've inherited. The traveler's journey suggests that technological progress and accumulated wealth provide no security if they aren't matched by physical and spiritual discipline. Proverbs 23:2 offers a grim instruction: put a knife to your throat if you are given to gluttony. If the mouth is indeed a two-edged sword, then how can we hope to survive when the enemy we fear most is ourselves? We are losing the silent battle against our own appetites.